Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. In today's episode, we will be looking at Honda's 1983 CB1100F. Well, some might consider Honda's CBX six-cylinder superbike the ultimate air-cooled superbike from Honda. The four-cylinder Honda CB1100F was smaller, lighter, quicker, faster, and better handling, not to mention simpler and much easier to maintain. The CB1100F debuted in 1983, and 1983 was really the swan song for the big bore, air-cooled, four-cylinder Japanese superbike. The CB1100F was an evolution of the CB900F Supersport. It featured a larger displacement, higher compression, 16-valve four-cylinder motor. The motor featured constant velocity key and carbs and a large oil cooler as well. Rear wheel horsepower on the CB1100F was 96 horsepower. It had 62 foot-pounds of torque. Depending on what source you reference, the CB1100F ran a high 10-second quarter mile to a low 11-second quarter mile, and the trap speeds ranged between 120 and 125 miles an hour. Top speed was right around 145 miles an hour. Honda's CB1100F used a 5-speed transmission. It was chain final drive. The transmission on the CB1100F was beefed up over that of the CB900. It housed the motor in a steel tube cradle frame. Looking at the front of the bike, the CB1100F used an air-assisted front suspension with rebound damping adjustment on that. It had dual disc brakes up front with twin piston calipers acting on those, and it also featured adjustable anti-dive. Out back, the CB1100F had dual rear shocks. They're the conventional units. They have spring preload adjustment and rebound adjustment as well. It has a box section steel tube swing arm with a large disc brake out back and a dual piston caliper acting on that. The wet weight on the CB1100F was 584 pounds, and it had a 4.4 gallon fuel tank. In 1983, the CB1100F competed against Suzuki's GS1100E and GS1100ES models. It also competed against Kawasaki's mighty GPZ1100. I previously owned a blue and white and red CB1100F. It had a Vance & Hines exhaust on it, and it was set up very much like the one shown in the pictures here. The seating position on the CB1100F was very compact for me. I'm 6'4", I'm a tall guy, and so I found it to be on the compact side. It felt like a smaller bike than the GS1100E. The seat on the Honda was a nice flat seat. It allowed you fore and aft room to move around on the bike, but it was a little bit on the narrow side, and that narrowness and the narrowness of the tank and the lowness of the seat height on the CB1100F really made it more ideal for shorter riders, while the GS1100E was more of a tall man's bike. The CB1100 featured a 150 mile an hour speedometer with a large tachometer. The CB1100F redlined at 9,500 RPM. And the instrumentation on the Honda is really minimalist when you look at the instrumentation on the GS1100E, which featured both the speedometer, the tach. It also featured a fuel gauge and a gear position indicator, and the Suzuki even featured an oil temp gauge as well. One of the things I noticed about the CB1100F in comparison to the CB900 Custom that I also owned is the CB1100F had a lot more vibration from the engine through the handlebars and through the other parts of the bike. And I was a little bit surprised by that given how smooth the CB900 Custom was. Braking-wise, the CB1100F featured very nice brakes. The anti-dive on the CB1100F also worked fairly well. The CB1100F was ahead of the GS1100E as far as braking performance and the performance of the anti-dive system. Handling-wise, the CB1100F handled like an early 80s sporting UJM. And while it never felt squirrely or did anything that surprised me, it just wasn't as well composed as the GS1100E is. I really like the styling on the CB1100F. I think it's a very nice looking bike, and it really looks good in either the blue or the red color schemes. These bikes are getting more and more collectible, and the values are going up on these. And honestly, it's really hard to find one that is in really, really nice condition. The CB1100F was only available in the US in 1983. And in 1984, Honda's liquid-cooled, big-bore V4 sport bikes and power cruisers were really taking the motorcycling scene by storm. Although the CB1100F lost out to the GS1100E from Suzuki in a lot of the comparison contests in the magazines, it's still a fantastic bike. It's still a great example of a big-bore UJM, and it's really the best of the breed. It was at a time where they had figured out the handling on the bikes. It was much better than the bikes from the 70s. It features the constant velocity carbs. It has the electronic ignition instead of the points. And the braking and the chassis performance really match the engine performance on the air-cooled superbikes of the early 80s. If you can find one of these in good condition for a decent price, man, pick it up. They're a neat machine, and I would love to own another one. All right, I don't know if there are any Honda CB1100F fans out there. If so, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.